the parent company of India's Covishield, has admitted in court that it knew about a serious clotting side effect called TTS. It may be news, but there is nothing new in it. Most of the Indians have taken 2 doses of Covishield. Before I go any further, this is not medical advice, but you don't have to take any precautions. You don't have to do any testing. You have to continue to lead your life enjoyably. You have nothing to worry about because of 3 reasons. First, if this rare side effect had to happen, it would have happened typically 3 to 30 days from your first dose, which you took about 3 years ago. Second, it is rare, extremely rare. How rare? This happens because of the adenovirus technology. Let's also consider the data from another adenovirus vaccine from United States called J&J. Looking at the UK data, the incidence was about 1 per 50,000 female or 1 per 100,000 male, or about 5 in a million. In Germany, it was about 10 in a million. In United States, about 5.8 cases per 1 million female and 2.2 cases per 1 million men. So, extremely rare. And third, it typically happens in young women. If you recall my own videos, I had said that if you are in India and if your age is between 18 and 30 and you are a female, you should go for Covaxin. But if you are a female in India and you have taken Covishield, nothing to worry about. If any side effect were to happen, it would have happened by now. So, what is this adenovirus? What happens exactly? So, we think that there is some kind of immune reaction, and that immune reaction creates a big clot, and that clot absorbs all the platelets from the body, creating deficit of platelets and bleeding. There was some thought whether the needle is at the wrong place and instead of a muscle it is going into a blood vessel, but we don't think much of that theory anymore. It typically happens only with adenovirus. So, what is this adenovirus? It is a common cold virus, and that is used as a vehicle. Means there is a adenovirus vaccine too, but that is only available for United States military. So, let us not worry about it. Rest of the world just uses it as a vehicle, like a vector on which you put other proteins, because we can catch cold easily. So, that vehicle enters and creates immunity. So, Covishield used this vector, adenovirus vector, and then first dose was sent on top of this CAR, COVID protein. The body made antibodies against the CAR, and it also made antibodies against the COVID protein. So, when the next dose came, the antibodies against the CAR stopped the second dose. That is why people like me were pleading with the government to increase the duration, the distance between the 2 doses. That makes the second dose more efficacious. In Russian vaccine, which was also adenovirus, they used 2 different adenoviruses, AD26 and AD5. So, AD26 was like Johnson and Johnson, AD5 was like China's CanSino Bio. So, there was this 4 adenovirus vaccines, and this side effect was only happening in the adenovirus vaccines. So, if the clots are formed at rare spots, could it be causing heart attacks? No. The myocardial inflammation seen was with mRNA vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna, and that too age under 25. The people who do not know the difference between myocardial inflammation and infarction should not really be talking about it. So, could heart attacks have happened because of this rare side effect? The answer is no, because if the heart attacks were to happen, it would have happened within few days of taking the first dose. There was a study in UK that showed some increased heart disease in female health workers, but we think now that that study was skewed because those females were exposed to COVID, and COVID could have caused the problem. See, the heart attacks have definitely increased, and I can understand the anger and the frustration of people who think it has been caused by vaccines. It's totally understandable. But we think there are no studies to show that the vaccines are causing it. We think the heart attacks have increased because of COVID virus itself, indiscriminate use of steroids, sedentary lifestyle, increased diabetes, increased stress, lack of exercise, and other factors. And we think in 2 to 3 years the risk will come back to baseline. So, were there any clotting effect with the other vaccines too? Means this stands to reason, right? We already looked at J&J, we looked at Covishield. With Gamaleya, means Russia's Sputnik, there were hardly any reports of clotting, and that's surprising because it's the same adenovirus technology. So, we expect to see about 5 cases per million. It was also used extensively in Argentina and Serbia, and there were no reports from there. CanSino Bio, China's vaccine, it was a single dose vaccine, and they used it in China and they licensed it to Pakistan, and Pakistan used it under the name of PacVac, and there were no reports of clotting. Kind of surprising because from China it could be reported properly, but you won't really know what the data is, and in Pakistan I don't know, but there was no reports. So what about India? Means India's was workhorse, right? Covishield. So we expect to see the same thing that we saw in Europe, at least 5 cases per 10 lakh people. Apparently there was one small study, there are no numbers, and the advisory group just said that they think that there are some cases like that, but they are 1/10 of that of Europe, but there were no numbers given. So if you or a family member has suffered from this, however rare, so I can understand your anger, but think about it, this was all studied, they knew about it, now they are admitted they knew about it, they still decided to go ahead. And what was that? The chance of say 1 in 10 lakh is about as much chance of having a car accident. Does that mean you are going to stop driving for tomorrow? The risk at that time was COVID was creating so much problems that in a population who had not taken the COVID vaccine, that population developing clotting and bleeding from COVID was much higher than what would have happened because of the vaccine. That is just statistics. That's why they decided to go ahead. So knowing what we know now, what India did at that time in early January 2021, that was the right thing to do, because the Covishield vaccine cut down the amount of serious disease and kept people away from the hospitals, without which I don't know what would have happened in the second wave. I know it's not very fashionable to say anymore, but that saved India during the second wave. Churchill used to say that you do not really need a parachute to jump out of plane. You need a parachute to jump out of plane twice. I don't know India, what would have happened to India without this vaccine. But now there are 2 problems that I see. The first problem is there is this epidemic of misinformation on WhatsApp, and then the people are just getting passionate and saying anything. Means I know I can, they're just, oh, vaccines are causing this was not there before the vaccine. Tell me something, before COVID were there not other diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, IBD, heart disease? So people who, of course there were diseases in the past and you would have developed that disease anyway, but it is human nature that you have taken the vaccine now and you develop a new disease and you say, hey, I never had anything like that before I took the vaccine. So you blame it on the vaccine, and that is understandable. There is a second part of the problem, and that is the COVID experts, and they treat the people who question the vaccine almost as untouchables. They are so smug, so self-satisfied, so angry and so condescending. Means they made a lot of mistakes. The people who were opposing vaccines, they had some legitimate questions, so they needed to be understood and taken care of. They are own people, but they were made to sound like outcasts, like this. Restrictions were placed. Initially they were talking about it, but afterwards when Omicron came, the efficacy was vaccine was not even 5-10%. Pushing the same vaccine as booster universally, means targeting it was fine, but pushing the vaccine, keep pushing the mask, and just calling the people who oppose vaccines and some kind of unscientific cranks, which was absolutely wrong. Means the experts got it completely wrong at many instances. So they need to show some humility and understand the pain of the people who are opposing the vaccines and these mandates. I'll end it with a story. Vaccine is called vaccine because of cow is vacca in Latin, after Edward Jenner, who got the cowpox vaccine for smallpox, 1796. So Edward Jenner was taking a nap and his maidservant made a comment to somebody else that she cannot get smallpox because she had cowpox. So most of the times the experts hardly know anything. The real knowledge and the wisdom comes from people who are common people, inexperts. We just need to listen to each other. Sorry for the long video, but like I said, you have nothing to worry about. Just forget the whole thing, Dr. Ravi Godse.